This is the time for ending all your future talks. What you're left with is exactly 4 weeks. So now it is time for action. Marks don't matter. That's when I realized that these mock tests and these marks don't matter. What matters is what you're learning from the process. Right. So then I learned the trick of understanding that some questions can be irrelevant. You don't have to worry about them. You just have to move on. At this stage, students should not consider mock only as a test. They should consider it as a source also. Right. And if you look at it that way, then you will be more curious to do, more questions and know more. So, and that will help. Now, the only catch here is the relevance of the content.
Hello and welcome to this special video by Vision IAS. Today we will discuss about Prelims 2024. As about 1 month is left, you may be finding it difficult to manage various things related to Prelims preparation. So to help you with this regard, we have today an esteemed faculty of Vision IAS, Harsh sir. Welcome sir.
Thank you.
Sir, before we start, now as 1 month is left, students are getting nervous about their preparation. Some of them are doubting whether they are fully prepared or not, and some of them are even thinking whether they should give this attempt or not. So how should they tackle this mindset that is being developed now?
So Kapil, I'll give a very straightforward one-line answer. If you're still listening to this video, which is about what to do in the last 30 days, I think you are already there, right? So I think this is time to just go on. That question of whether I should give or not is over for you.
Sir, coming to the important challenges students will face in the time that is left. Time management is one very important challenge. So how should students manage their time properly provided that the time that is left?
See Kapil, on this we can think very objectively. So first of all, as I said, you shouldn't be talking to your, after the exam, what will happen and also those future talks should end. This is the time for ending all your future talks. What you're left with is exactly 4 weeks. So now it is time for action. That's it. So you just have to keep acting and that's it.
Okay, sir. And sir, one important aspect of time management is routine.
So on that, I would say that you can break your routine. So first of all, I think one thing that I would suggest here is that the things that have worked for you in the past worked for you. You have to figure out. I think if you think too much and if you talk too much to yourself, that's where you lose your time. And that's where your time management goes topsy-turvy. So the best thing to do is just take your actions. Now, in these almost 4 weeks that we are left with, you have to identify which works are needed. One is the necessary work that you have to do on a daily basis, which is something like, and that's where you have to cut down all your time. So you have to reduce it to the minimum possible. Some people are able to do it within half an hour or so. So you just do that. One. So the necessary work. Then it comes to your study part. Now, whatever time is left, you have to divide it in your study. And that's where we'll talk that how should you study. Right, that is one thing. And then I think last part which is left is you have to give yourself a bit of motivation and some recreation. So do give it on a daily basis so that you don't get too much exhausted in the process. That's it. So if you just continue this for the next 4 weeks, I think it should work.
And one important another challenge after time management is revision. So what should be the strategy for revisions for the student?
Yeah, so when we say coming to the study part of it, so there are two parts to this whole thing now that they have to do. One is revision, the other one is giving the, stimulating the conditions and giving the exam. Now, so when we talk of the revision part of this, so I think in revision, what is necessary is how do you do it? One is your content, which is your regular content which you're doing. So you have to scan it? Yes, you have to. And I think you shouldn't be moving to here and there any other content. Whatever you have, you focus on that and you keep working on that. So that is one part. Then comes to the mock part, which again to me, if you ask me, is revision only. Because when you see the mock is not a test anymore for you. Test to aap ek hi denge. You will give only one test, which is the test on the D-Day. Before that, any test that you are giving is nothing but content only for you. Right. So when you go through that, you know that I know this, or you know, oh, I don't know this. Now, if you don't know this, that's your new content. Right. And this is where I'll bring in some more concepts like, another concept like what I call brownfield and greenfield content. So you shouldn't be looking greenfield and brownfield. I believe everyone who's preparing for UPSC knows. Greenfield is something from scratch. Brownfield is something that you already know and you're building on it. So obviously you shouldn't start anything which is from scratch. But yes, if there is something that you need to improvise on, and that's exactly why you're giving your marks, then you must do it. So that's your new content. So it's like incremental increase. You're not doing something completely new, but yes, incrementally you have to do.
In revision also, students face difficulty in current affairs. Now it is a very important part of prelims. So what should be the approach towards current affairs in the time that is left now?
So in current affairs, there are like, I would say, if you have been preparing, because this is a marathon that you are running, right? And if you are running the marathon, you have already done those laps at least, right? Which means you have already done a bit of your current in the past from some sources. So should you be switching to new sources? I don't think, right? So if you have done, for example, if you have done your Vision IAS current affair material or whatever you are referring to, so you should just revise it n number of times, go through it, and then your mock will take care of the other things, right? Because in the mock, we think that there are, let's say, for example, 100 questions, but they are not 100 questions. Every option is also a content itself. So the right answer is the right part, and the things that you don't know or where you get confused, that's your new content. So that's your new current affair. So that's how you add up, I believe. So when it comes to current affairs, see, I feel that because this is almost a marathon which you are already doing, you are doing it for almost a year, right? At least, or maybe a slightly shorter span. So you have already done some current affairs, right, which you are following. As to any that you are starting from scratch now. So anything that you have already done, you should just revise it, and in that, so once you have revised, after that you give your mock. In the mock, you will realize that this is the thing that I missed, this is the thing that I knew. So anything that you missed, where your questions go wrong, that's your new content, right? So that's where you incrementally add up your content rather than going to something completely new. And this is where, for Vision, for example, Vision IAS, for all those years that I have known Vision IAS PT 365 is one of the best recognized sources. So I would suggest, this is where I can suggest that yes, 365, if you have done it, revise it.
Sir, after current affairs, now mock tests, as you mentioned, they become a very crucial source for preparation also. So what is this importance of mock? Why they are so important for prelims, specifically now when 30 days are left?
See, mock, when you are preparing, like let's say in the initial phase, when you are preparing, you try to, it's a way of testing yourself. But if you ask me now that you are left with the 4 weeks, I don't think mock anymore is just for testing yourself. It's also content for you, right? So when you give a mock test, it helps you recognize, I would say recognize in the answer that this is something that I know and this is something that I don't know. Now the thing that you don't know is your new content, right? So I would say this, that at this stage, students should not consider mock only as a test. They should consider it as a source also, right? And if you look at it that way, then you will be more curious to do, more questions and know more. So, and that will help. Now, the only catch here is the relevance of the content. So that when you're giving a mock, you should see that whether the question that I'm going to do and has new content, is it relevant or not? And I believe because you are prepared, you are in a position to understand whether it is relevant or not. So just apply that lens of relevance. If it is important, just do it.
Sir, one more thing that mock add is practice, that you practice the exam. So how should you practice mocks?
So when you're, for example, when you're practicing mock, right? So what would generally happen is that your answers would either be right or your answers will be wrong. Where your answers are wrong, you identify this is my weak area, right? And then you figure out whether it's a conceptual area or it's a factual area. Now, if it's a factual area, you figure out the fact. But if it's not a factual area and it's a conceptual area, that's where you need more questions on that, right? So one thing you do is you revise your concept. Second, you do more questions on that. That's where initiatives like we have started Sandhan, right? So Sandhan also comes in there, right? And Sandhan can help you figure out your weak area and work more on it. So I think that's how mocks will help in this whole process. And it is, I believe, this is the stage where you have to, do more of your questions, but not as question, but as content.
And sir, students also have this doubt whether what is the best way to practice mock. So should they sit at their home? Should they go to the center? So what is the best way to do that?
I think some of the mocks you must give in the real test situation, right? And this is where our test series comes in. We have our Abhyas test series. So I think one of them is due in a week's time. So I think you can take that. If you have not taken, if you are already taken, anyways, do take, and if possible, take some more so that you get that situational feel that what would I do. So because at home you never get that feeling, no matter how seriously you take it. So I think that's the answer.
So another doubt a student have is that how should they attempt a test? What should be their strategy for attempting a test?
Okay. So see, when it comes to prelims is a test where your goal is not to recall the answer. Many people come, sir, I'm not able to retain the answer, I'm not able to recall. It's not recall, you have to recognize the answer because the answer is in front of you. UPSC gives you 100 questions, it gives you 100 answers and every answer is just below the question. All you have to do is, there you have to just recognize that answer. So if you work on that recognition thing, if you are able to recognize after seeing it, it's good enough. You don't have to recall sitting in the room. Right. So I think this is the level because many people put too much effort in trying to recall it. It's not needed. You just have to see whether I can, recognize the answer when it is in front of my ear. If it is there, you save your time. So this is one. Second is when we come to those questions, right? So every question can be divided into few categories. The first one is the easiest question where for every student, easy question, moderate question, difficult question will be different. So when we say easy questions, these are the ones where you see the question, you see the answer and you know this is the answer, right? That's the easiest question for you. Maybe it's very difficult for somebody else, but for you it is. But there is a chance of mistake, which is we generally see that when students appear in the prelims, there are few silly mistakes that they do. Silly mistakes are done with mostly these questions, right? So I generally suggest when you see a question, when you see the answer and you know this is the answer, close your eyes, give yourself probably a second, reread the question, figure out is there a catch. Most probably there is no catch. The answer is right. But if there is a catch, this is the time to recognize because otherwise you will come out and you will say, right? So rather than repenting that, I should have read the question, do it there. This is about first kind of question. Second kind of questions are your 50-50 questions, where you feel that the answer is one of the two or one of the three. Right now, this is where there are two things that might happen with you. One is your intuitional answer, the other is your knowledge based answer, where you are thinking through and coming through. Right, there's another thing that I find with most of the students. So when we say intuitional answers, I would say that this is the time where you test and collect data that how many of my intuitional answers went right, how many of my thought over answers went right. Okay, and that's when, if you think that over a period you realize that in the last 1 month, most of my intuitional answers were right. So in the exam hall, go with your intuition. But if you think that maybe where I thought over the answer and the answer changed and that was right, so that's your trend, at least in the next 1 month. So there you follow that trend of thinking and then figuring out. So this is where you work with your questions. Go on marking in the test that this was my intuitional answer, this was my, after the test. So that will help because this is where you collect the data and it's all about probability. Prelims is more about your, probabilities. So in every question you are improving your probability of getting selected. Yeah.
So students are also nervous about how many marks they are getting in mocks. So what should they do about that? If they are getting good marks or if they are getting bad marks, how should they take that?
I think you could read it while you are saying that question, the answer that I was supposed to give, which is forget it. The answer is as simple as this. Forget your marks right now. It doesn't matter how many marks you are getting in any of your tests, right? Just put your level best, right? And improvise on every question. As I said, these mocks are not your test now. They are content for you. Okay, so just go on knowing more because there's just going to be one test. And I assure you that if you take it this way and if you just go on preparing, put your level best, no matter how many marks you're getting in these tests, your mark on the D-Day will be good. I'll tell you, in my last attempt, I gave one of the tests and I really did pathetic. And there was a friend of mine, Hemant, and he came and I said, Hemant, this year I'm not even clearing prelims, right? He said, Harsh, this was a very difficult paper, right? So don't worry. But just before he came, I was actually technically weeping, right? So I would say that marks don't matter. That's when I realized that these mock tests and these marks don't matter. What matters is what you're learning from the process, right? So then I learned the trick of understanding that some questions can be irrelevant. You don't have to worry about them. You just have to move on.
So one more area now, which is getting very important, is CSAT. It is no longer a cakewalk. You need to work hard for it. So what should be the approach for CSAT paper for prelims?
The approach for CSAT paper should be, because the kind of changes that UPSC is doing, actually UPSC is playing with your ego. That's what I'm finding. That the ones who are good at English, they feel I'm good at English, so I should attempt all of them. And that's where they play. The ones who are engineers, they feel we are good, we are engineers, izzat hai yaar. So that's where they're feeling on maths. So I would suggest that when you see the whole paper, see every year there is a certain number of students who will clear, right? So all you have to do is forget the small battles of logical reasoning and this and that. Just think of the whole war, right? So figure out the questions that in the exam, in the paper, you are able to do. Don't get stuck with any question. Don't hold to a question just because, oh, this was my respect, ego question. So because that's what UPSC wants to test, that are you getting stuck with your ego, right? So I think work with questions which are easy in the paper, and if you find a question which is difficult, leave it and move on. That's it.
Sir, as paper comes closer and closer, student will get more anxious and the level of anxiety will also increase. So is there a way, some tricks, techniques that student can inculcate for next 30 days or a month or so to get rid of it or to at least dampen this anxiety or stress?
Yeah, so there are two parts to this. One is the mind, the other is the body. The first part, the mind part, I would say do not do over talk with yourself right now. Stop doing too many conversations with yourself. Just give yourself a task and perform it. Right? It's a battle. So it's a time to assault. You can't do future talks right now. Right? So it's time to assault. Go on working, go on doing your work in a very routine manner. And if you properly follow your routines, everything will fall in line. Right? So I think that's the best strategy rather than too much of talks here and there. And in the process, keep yourself motivated. For that, or entertained also, I would say, for that, talk to somebody, read something, listen to something for a very short duration every day, so that you do not motivationally feel down or you are not too entertained, because your mind needs some entertainment, right? So I think that's where this part is taken care of. Second part is about your body. I think this is the time where you must recall from your past that which are the things which which help me keep my body healthy and not feeling bad. So you shouldn't be feeling lethargic, you shouldn't be feeling bad, you shouldn't be feeling too heavy with this thing. So I think that's where everyone will have his own set of routine, but one important thing is your food, right? Come to food, or start for the next 4 weeks. Keep yourself only restricted to food which make you feel health wise happy, not taste wise. I'm not talking of taste. It should be health wise. Your stomach should not feel bad. You should feel energetic. You should feel good. You should not feel sleepy. So if you're able to do these two things, and if you're able to work, the more work you do, the more it will motivate. Right. So I think it's a virtuous cycle. Right. So the more work you do, better, and you will be able to, reach your goals.
So, sir, coming to the concluding part of our session, would you like to share any motivation message with our students?
Dear, I would say that the biggest motivation that I feel a man can get or a person can get in his life is by doing his task properly. If you give yourself 100% to the task, there is nothing more motivating than that, right? Not even the result. When you come out and you tell yourself, I have given my best, I think that's the biggest motivation. And this is the time for that. So give your best right now, so that once you come out of the exam hall and once you have done your answer checking and whatever, in the end, you should be in a position to say, in the last 1 month, I did give my best, right? And then you will either succeed in terms of the result, or if not. If not, you know that if I could give it for 1 month, I can stretch that and I can give it for a longer time. Right, so that will keep you motivated in the cycle, because UPSC cycle is, at times it's like more than a year. So that's where it helps. So I believe the biggest motivation is that you should think that on the day after the exam, what will I be saying to myself? Will I be saying that I didn't give my best, or will I be saying I gave my best? If you gave your best, forget everything else.
Thank you so much, sir, for guiding our aspirants.
Thank you, dear.
So, aspirants, I hope that the various doubts you had for prelims were addressed by sir effectively. Try to inculcate the tips and techniques sir has mentioned. They will help you greatly in your prelims preparation. For now, all the best for coming prelims 2024. We hope you all do great in the prelims. Thank you.